Want to have a conversation.
Who would have thunk it?
Not I. Not I.
You keeping your hat on the whole time for all this lights and all that?
Boys.
Yep.
My grandpa, when I would say that before, he said, "You call an alligator a lizard?"
Alligator.
That's right.
I mean, don't call me boy.
But I was raised in Southeast Texas. It's like, you see a boy, slap him.
That's right.
I still don't know for sure what that means, but it's like,
Yeah, there's all these little old sayings that our grandfathers have that are probably somewhat definitely insulting, inappropriate, and maybe mildly racist, but yeah.
God love them.
God love them, right?
Yes.
So, episode 3, Misfit Social Podcast. It is good to have my childhood friend, my best man in my wedding, Mr.
Really?
Adam Howell.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah, the author of I Want to Be a Rock Star. If you've not heard that song, it's going to drop at the end of this pod.
I got a feeling
It's about to get its due, man.
Yeah, it's going platinum. And worked on shows, everything from Extreme Home Makeover, Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, and now you're helping us record the pod. So good to have you on, brother.
It's amazing to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I can't believe it. Many, many years later. Yeah, no, I'm grateful to be here.
So give us, I mean, obviously you and I go way back, had some humble beginnings we were joking earlier about all the recording that we did in the Holiness Church that I grew up in. I had a key to get us in late at night, so we'd go in and play pumpkins, record your stuff.
What was the song that you just said you recorded?
I want to be a rock star, baby.
Give us the tune. You got to give us the tune.
Oh, you want to hear
Give
it?
us the chorus.
This is like in church.
Oh, I remember it.
We
You
got to get the little,
recorded this-
almost
Let's
the
go.
tune.
In church.
What
you
about that
recorded
guitar
this?
right there?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if it's tuned up, but let's
Well,
see.
it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Let's go.
You want to be a rock star?
Yeah.
A hit's a hit. It
was
doesn't have to
something
be in
like-
tune.
That's not in tune, but whatever. I want to be a rock star, baby. I want to be a star.
And I was playing the drums.
I want to be a rock star, baby. I don't care how far I have to go. Have to go.
Oh my God, that is a hit.
I mean, how is
When
that
you
not
guys
number
get to the
one?
how
pearly
is that
gates.
not? Yeah.
When you get to the pearly gates, they'll be looking through the book and they'll go, "Oh, remember that night?"
And that's why you are not allowed.
There's just this one small issue that we're going to have to work through here before we let you in.
I need you to sign this.
Describe to us what you were thinking that night.
So at 16, I had this idea that, maybe we could be rock stars. It felt like we could be. We snuck into the church late at nights, and I had a little 4-track analog tape recorder that my dad so kindly bought for me to support my desire to be an artist and a musician.
Nice.
And Cliff was a killer drummer back in the day, and guitar. You were starting to play guitar more at that time.
Yeah.
So I couldn't play drums for anything, and I still can't. And so I was like, man, this is going to be so great. In the church, this big, loud, booming sound, and we record, and it was so awesome. And we tried to get on local radio. It didn't quite happen for us, but...
Now, just help out my memory a little bit. I played the drums, but I feel like there were several songs where you were playing the keys, you were playing bass, you were playing the guitar, you were doing, I certainly wasn't doing the vocal, you were doing the vocal.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was doing the vocal and playing all the other instruments, with some mediocrity. But yeah, I was
Some level of
doing my best.
mediocrity.
Well, you were channeling your inner Billy Corgan at that time,
I love
right?
Billy Corgan still to this day.
Yeah.
Still love me some pumpkins.
Yeah. So you mentioned your dad briefly. Tell us a little bit about who your dad was. And
Yeah, God bless him. He's not with us anymore. He passed in 2005, but I had a great dad. So I'm the middle of 3 boys. My dad was a dentist. Never pushed that on me. He was totally supportive of me being.
You do have a really good smile, though, and I noticed, and I was like, "Oh, the dad. Okay, now we got it.
Well, thank you.
Straight, like, oh,
Thank you. And so he supported what I wanted to do, which was great, and encouraged me. I remember he had an old beat up acoustic guitar in the house, and one day I looked at it, I was like, I kind of want to learn how to play. And literally the next day we went to a local little music shop. He bought me a knockoff Stratocaster, little $100 guitar and an amp, and taught me he could play guitar, rather rudimentary style, but nonetheless could play. And he taught me how to play Born to Be Wild.
Oh yeah,
and the intro to Purple Haze. And so I remember by the end of the first night, I had like a little bit of those riffs down.
He'd done some church recording too.
He'd done some church recording. He actually recorded on local news in Louisville where he grew up. But, and he encouraged that. And all the way into me going to college to learn how to be a recording engineer and do music production.
Where was that? Where was the college?
In Full Sail, which is
Florida?
In Florida. Yeah, just outside of Orlando in Winter Park. And I had a blast there. I learned how to do some things on Pro Tools, which became the industry standard for recording, and that led me into doing sound for television and documentaries and productions and things.
So was that kind of a new thing when you were kind of getting those skills? Was that whole, the reality TV thing? Was that where was that in the?
Yeah, so I grew up on MTV, and growing up in a small town of Kentucky where we did and where we are, I didn't know anything about hip hop rap culture. I didn't know anything about sleazy Sunset Strip Los Angeles. I didn't know anything about grungy alternative things. We didn't have like a cool hip record store. We didn't have that culture. So I learned voyeuristically about all these other cultures and identities through TV, MTV. And then at that same time in the early 90s, that was really the advent. It had been around prior to that, but that was really the advent of reality TV, which we don't really say anymore because we all know it's not really that real. I just call it unscripted television or whatever. But at the time, it was kind of real. You take these situations for the real world and you put these people in this unreal scenario and just hit go and see what happens. And so it was strange because what I was referring to, my dad helping me get a skill basically that turned into a trade. My first big production sound job started at MTV in Los Angeles many years later. So I still to this day.
So how do you get that gig from Florida to there? I mean, how's that?
That's a great question.
Yeah, so give us.
How do you get in the front of the line?
We're going from small town Madisonville, and I remember you saying, "Hey, man, I'm going to Full Sail and Orlando, or right outside Orlando," and launching off in the dream, and it became a reality. So walk us through that a little bit.
So I go to this school and I think I'm going to New York. Well, I met a girl that was in the film production department, and I thought, well, maybe go to New York, but LA sounds pretty cool. Went out to LA, found a place that I liked. I knew no one. At that event, which was a college get-together in Los Angeles, I met someone who was working at a studio with Hans Zimmer, the Oscar-winning film composer. And he said, I might be able to put a word in for you. Now, this is someone I met literally an hour before. I go back to Full Sail to kind of pack up. I'm driving cross-country. I'm in the middle of Texas. I get a phone call. We'd like to bring you in for this unpaid internship with Hans Zimmer.
What year was this?
2002.
Oh.
Yeah, 2002. So I
I'm
get
trying to picture your cell phone. You did this. I was like, no,
it was almost like that. It was
he had to get the cord out of
rotary dial.
Yeah.
Wall Street.
bag phone.
So I made it there and I started this unpaid internship, and
you had a little bit of problems on one of those trips, didn't you?
Yeah, well, the front wheel fell off of the Cadillac DeVille.
Well, I mean, you say that
in Oklahoma, but it was no big deal. They had great sweet tea. I had a wonderful afternoon.
So wait, you had a Cadillac DeVille, but wasn't that cool? Cadillac DeVille, or was it cool?
I think
Cadillac?
It was super cool to be that uncool at the time.
Oh, okay. It was kind of grunge cool.
It was kind of like a boat floating down in Oklahoma. Yeah. So I get out there and I get to meet this guy, Hans Zimmer, and I learned some things about what they do. And I thought that I wanted to be involved with film score composing. That's really what I wanted to do. And I learned they're using all kinds of different formats and software that I know nothing about, like real imposter syndrome. No clue. Plus, I'm only 22 at the time. I truly didn't know much. And at one point they said, we think Hans really likes you. He's talked to you like twice in these first 2 weeks. It's really good. And, he sent me on runs to go get caviar for lunch and all these things that I just knew nothing about. And one task that I was given was he was working on a Nicolas Cage film. And I was supposed to transfer footage onto a hard drive, drive it up to his house in Malibu that evening, and come back early the next day. My commute was like an hour and 20 minutes every day. I didn't know the routes at this time. It was pre-GPS. I got a call the next day saying, yeah, don't come in tomorrow. We're good. Thank you for your time. I put the wrong movie on the wrong hard drive, and so
yeah,
I got fired from an unpaid internship.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
Ouch.
Heartbreaking. Call back home and tell my dad that, but he was still so supportive.
Okay.
He was still so
So
supportive.
you just stayed out there anyway?
I just stayed out there, and then soon thereafter, a producer for a TV show at MTV heard some songs that I had recorded and said, hey, you're pretty good at this recording. Maybe you could come help us record some shows out in the field and put some microphones on people. And of course, I knew nothing about that.
Right.
I knew they did that, but I didn't know how to do it. So, show up early, leave late, learn on the...
Well, this one was a paid gig?
I got paid for that one. I do remember the rate that they quoted me, and they told me you're going to get paid X amount. And to this day, I humble myself with this. I said to the person, I said, is that per week or per day? And he said, that'll be per day. And I hung up, and it was like 2 days a week. I swear, I thought I was so rich. It's like, this is amazing. I can work like 2 days a week, and I'm good to go. And I get to do something creative and fun.
Yeah.
So I've always been grateful for the job, and I actually like what I do. And I did that primarily for 17 years, 18 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And somewhere along this journey, I remember where I was standing in Lexington, Kentucky, when you called me and you were like, hey, there's a business proposition I have. I feel like, this is going to be some risk on my part, but I feel like the risk is going to be worth the reward. And clearly it was. What was that opportunity that...
Yeah, I was very fortunate. Somebody saw something in me early on. This is 2004. I was 24 years old. And an investor guy who was also in the sound industry, in the TV world, said, hey, man, I'd like to buy some equipment and send you out to go record these things. You're doing a good job with these shows. And I said, that sounds great. So what does that mean? He's like, let's be 50-50 partners in this. You go out and make a name for us, and let's see how this goes. Very fortunate. I mean, those deals don't really happen very often. And somehow we managed to garner a few clients and get a few things on our resume. So,
man, what an unbelievable
that guy's
story.
retired now in the Caribbean. He doesn't do anything anymore.
In those early days, what would you describe your role as on these sets? Like, what's the technical or maybe loose term even?
So I was a production sound mixer, which means I'm going on set of the production and recording the sounds, putting the microphones on everyone, determining a lot of how it's going to be recorded. And ultimately, the way I describe it to people is like when you're watching a TV show, if you can hear them talking, that's mostly what I did.
So that grew into more producing the whole thing.
Yeah. So we're kind of jumping forward quite a lot, but so once COVID hit, that really changed so much of our industry, I'm sure, as you guys know. And that got me thinking, like a lot of people, what is it that I want to do creatively? Because there's really only so much you can do with sound doing the way I was doing it creatively. And I would be involved behind the scenes a lot with, this next scene we're going to be shooting. What do you think? And I would give kind of ideas and notes. And over the years, it's sort of developed into more like a ghost producing role, if you will, back in the day, it's like ghostwriters of books and ghostwriters of film scores and ghostwriters of producing songs. And those things started to be credited more frequently over the years. One of the things that I see happening a lot in my business, pull pull the wool back a bit, or the curtain back a bit, is that there are people on sets that are doing a number of things, just like most jobs. And yeah, I was lucky enough to kind of start ghost producing some things and kind of directing some things. And that led to more of what I've been doing since COVID, really.
So you said COVID changed things. Describe that. What is that?
So for our industry, I'll give you an example. Once it really kicked in, things halted, productions halted. And so most of us were and are freelance. So we didn't have the luxury of having any income or any kind of certainty at all from a financial or employed. So that was huge. And then once we started getting back into productions, I mean, jumping forward a bit, just by the summer of 2022, I was working as an audio supervisor for one of the biggest streaming companies out there. And I was still taking a COVID test every day on set. And by the end of 2022, I was supervising a major network TV show, still the same. I mean, so by 2023, the industry had just changed so much. And then 2023 into 2024, there were a lot of strikes, writer strikes. There were a lot of issues kind of behind the scenes that were causing a lot of productions to get halted, the number of jobs to start to dwindle, budget, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of the woes that many industries have. But the Hollywood sort of entertainment business, what I've worked in for so long, really got choked.
So then it started kind of shifting to this, to the internet, right?
Much more of that. You got it. I mean, YouTube has been incredible for that. And I try to optimistically be realistic of this. And I think that the medium has changed so dramatically that it's become much more of an online thing, like what you're talking about.
So production quality and level and expectation. I mean, some kid that's 18 years old that's got a proclivity toward, technical things. Can he mimic the level that you guys would go? Or is it like a huge eye roll for you? Or, or does the audience even expect that anymore? I don't know.
I think that's a great question. I mean, yes and no. I think there's a lot of merit in DIY look and feel sometimes.
Yeah.
But I also think that it is tough to translate those skills. I kind of think of myself as part of the last generation that had a wonderful budget and wonderful travel and wonderful, perks.
But also know how to do it.
But also kind of know how to do it and be able to hire people that know how to do it. There are a lot of shifts in that. So I think it's a yes and no. I think that you can embrace, just like a lot of things, you embrace the way that you used to do it with the way that it's going to be done, and somehow meet in the middle and say, this is the way we're doing it currently.
Yeah. It's sort of like music bands that come out, initially, and they write an initial song or something that hits like crazy, and they just kind of garage banded,
Yeah.
But they have that raw talent, and something, it almost gets worse, as they age, as they try to perfect it, something about that raw talent. But I guess that could have a translation in your world too.
No, go ahead.
As someone who's been in the industry, that was so disruptive with streaming and some of the big tech companies, right, diving into TV or serialized programming. Where do you see that going? From maybe a business model or
where would you put your eggs in what
the
basket?
Landscape a bit? I was just curious your thoughts in general around where that's pointing, because that's not fully settled, because they're looking for viewership, right? And they're trying to get subscriptions. But from what I'm reading, that business model isn't fully, like, it's been so disruptive, but it's still a bit up in the air as to where that is with all that.
Yeah, if you had a bunch of money, what pocket would you put it in,
Maybe Cliff's.
Skip the industry altogether, right?
Good call.
No, I mean, the head of Sony just announced that the next 2 years will be prepared for lots of chaos, bankruptcies, and mergers. And so again, I try to optimistically be realistic.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, where do I see it going? I see it going where it is going, which is fewer people sitting down watching cable television or even network televisions, you know, bigger conversation. But I think people don't really buy into a lot of what you see on public, you know,
Too scripted.
Consumption. Exactly.
Yeah.
Too scripted, too biased one side or the other. And I think that people are becoming a little more independent with what they want to produce and the content that they're putting out. So whether that be on big streamers, which are still doing some really cool stuff, or the YouTube world, or even just your own channel and things like that. I see that happening much more. And social media platforms are so influential these days.
Yeah. So from my own experience, Tunco, we hired Adam's company to come in and do some basically like some short films for us to highlight trade shows, a little bit of behind the scenes of the family business, things of that nature.
I didn't know he did those, but I did watch the one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Cliff. I was kind of impressed because I was getting ready to be underwhelmed.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the low expectations.
That was tight, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I tell my wife. Don't expect much. You get what you get.
But I didn't know Adam did. That's cool.
Yeah. So, but like, did you see the one where we were actually sitting probably in these chairs and I was playing guitar, smoking a cigar? All right. So the one area where I feel like it takes craft and mastery and skill to get feel right is like all of those interactions were not only somewhat coached by him about me, like, hey, your gut's hanging out here, or, you know, this or that, whatever, but also his camera guy, you know, working on getting the angle just right. I mean, when we were setting up and when they were setting up, in my mind, I'm like, okay, we're putting way too much work into this.
Overkill here.
Yeah. But then when I saw the end product, I'm like, this cat's a genius. Like, you know, I guess I was underwhelmed about what we could do as well. And then we saw the final product, but I don't think it would have looked that good if I just went out and hired somebody that they could get their hands on the equipment, but didn't have the skill and the expertise and the experience to be like, hey, position this here, do this, do that. I mean, his team is a master at that. And all of the feedback that we've had on social media through these video drops, I mean, it's put us over the moon.
That's a level. Yeah, it's like a professional level. Really, it did speak that.
Yeah.
I'd like to kind of dig in a little bit because you started with sound, right? Make sure I'm correct.
That's right.
So you started with sound. So a question and then a follow-up. Sound on a set, right? So how does that work together, synergizing? Because you've got video that you're capturing and sound that you're capturing. So I'm sure those are a little bit separate to start, right? As you're doing that, how does that then merge later? Is that in editing, or how do those two teams work together, sound and video, just in general?
Yeah, on set, when you're on set, they have to sort of be in sync, literally and figuratively.
Right.
But nowadays with a podcast, we want to watch them most of the time. But the old adage I used to give was, if you don't have the dialogue and the audio, I don't care how beautiful your shot is. And a lot of camera friends of mine will say that as well. Nowadays, we want to watch this podcast too, but that's kind of the idea. Story, whether it be an unscripted TV show, whether it be the story you're telling in a song, whether it be the story you're telling in a feature film, whatever it is, it's all about the heart, the emotion, and what you're capturing. And it all starts with the voice. And what are you telling me? The images really help drive that, you know? I think so. It's kind of backwards in the early film days. You know, you had talkies, right? You just had that, but you still had sound, you still had music, you still had things that just drive that emotion. And so the way you marry those is, it's sometimes the video or the music and things like that can really enhance what you've got there. But if you don't have an intelligent, wise, fun, interesting group of people talking, I don't care how great these chairs look in the camera.
It's going to fail, man. We're not going to do it. I can see it now.
So it seems that you do both, right? You've done both for us here in the setup here. So you start with sound. What opens that door to video? And I know they synergistically go together, which your answer perfectly points to that. But your personal journey of starting in sound, being very proficient, knowing what you're doing, doors opening up, breakthrough, and then how did you move towards the camera?
Well, like Cliff was saying, I have a team, and I try to take very little credit for what they do. One thing that I think I have learned over the years in business is I know what I do really well, and I also know just as well what I am not great at.
Excellent.
And I'm okay with hiring someone to do that. I don't need to prove that I'm the best cameraman or I'm not at all. In fact, as we're setting this up, I was, FaceTiming one of my director of photography friends saying, hey, so what do you think about this? I love collaborating. I love it. To me, that's like this, in creativity, that's the slice right there for me. Yeah. Because I one of the things you're asking about, I don't think you can teach creativity necessarily. I think that you can build on it. But I think there's an innate, a kid that's just great at drawing, or a kid that's just fantastic at coming up with the best ways to start a business, and they can do 10 of them throughout their life. There's something innate there. You can build on it, and you can go to school and kind of learn on it, and you can, chop it up with people. But maybe that's what I'm good at, is a little bit of creativity that is maybe God-given. And I like to humble myself with, let me ask somebody, what do you think? And tell me the real. And that's one of the reasons we've been, best of friends for years and years, is he can tell me the real, I can tell him the real. And I think that that's the best about work relationships too. You want to surround yourself with people you trust their instinct, but also they can tell you when something's not quite great.
Yeah, I love it. Prioritizing the we, the we.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's power in that collective. Well, I've been asking a couple questions. I mean, I don't know where I heard this, but so we've got sound, we've got video, but there is also piano lessons for celebrities. So I've heard something in terms of just offering piano lessons to people that our audience would know. Could you tell us a story? I'm not even sure where I heard that.
Well, I'm not a very good piano player. Let's start with that. My grandmother was a piano teacher for 40 years, and she would teach me things. And so as a kid, I would learn about, Bach and Beethoven and these things. Meanwhile, I'm listening to the Beatles and the Smashing Pumpkins and things like that. So that kind of opened my world into trying to play piano. But one of the first sort of big jobs I had out in Hollywood was at Capitol Records. I got hired to do a music video for Gwen Stefani. She had just started her solo career, and she was doing her debut music video at Capitol Records. This is where Frank Sinatra recorded, Nat King Cole. I mean, the Beach Boys, incredible echo chambers. So I was just awestruck. I get there. My boss that I'm working with that day, so I'm like the sound assistant for the day of the video. I don't know anything about music videos or how to do it, other than I loved watching them on MTV. The guy that I was working with was an interesting character. He gave me a wonderful opportunity and set me out to start doing this production sound stuff. Kind of looking at my clock. I got there early. When it's the actual call time, he's not there yet. So I give him another about 5 minutes, and finally I call him. Like, hey, good morning. I could tell he just woke up.
Ooh.
He lived in Malibu. We're in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, that's a minute.
And now it's rush hour. We got there early, but it's like 7:30, 8 in the morning at this point. And he's like, I'll be right there. He had all the equipment.
Oh.
So I'm this lowly assistant. The director's asking me, where's all the sound? I don't even know who the director is. I know nothing. I'm just doing my best to try to save face. So basically when my boss at the time comes in, we essentially get fired before the day starts.
Ouch.
He tells my guy, like, hey, it's a 2-day video shoot. We got to have you here today. Let's kill this, but don't come back tomorrow. Oh. So second time in my career within a few months.
Ouch.
It's good to get those out of the way right in the beginning. You know what I mean? Thankfully, there haven't been many of those throughout. But anyway, so we set up to do this music video, and it's a long format music video. Back in the day when it's like you tell a story, there's a narrative, and then the music. Well, in the video, Gwen Stefani is supposed to be writing the song because it's the debut song on her debut album, the first track, and it starts off with her playing piano. Well, when the director calls for playback, which we're in charge of, playing the music, so the video, she's like, well, I don't really know how to play piano. And I thought, is there anything I can do to help this moment? So learning guitar and music by ear, how about we just play the song and let me figure out how to play it? And there's a piano right here in Capitol Records. And so that's what I did. We played the song. I sit at the piano bench with Gwen Stefani, and I learned how to play her song on piano. I'd never heard the song before. It hadn't come out yet. Hadn't dropped. learned how to play it. And I taught Gwen Stefani how to play her song on the piano by putting different colors of tape for the various chords.
Oh, very cool.
These 3 keys that are red, that's your G minor, and these blue ones are your D. And so in the video, she's playing piano.
How do you hide the tape? You didn't show the finger?
Yeah, the camera angle.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
hides it, yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow.
That is so cool.
Yeah, we still got fired, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
Did they pay you for that part? Hey.
I got paid for that day.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, and you got to sit with Gwen Stefani. So.
That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Wasn't a total loss.
Yeah.
Perks.
I
Yeah.
mean, she's never gotten over you. She had to get all the way to Blake Shelton to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Blake's a good guy too. I met him backstage once. We were on Extreme Makeover Home Edition. We were talking about that. Miranda Lambert at the time was really popular. She and Sheryl Crow were on the show, and we recorded them on set playing some songs. And we got invited to go to Miranda Lambert's show at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, where we lived. And so we go, and we're backstage, and there's this handsome, tall lug back in the background. And I didn't know a lot about country music at the time, but of course he was coming up, and
Yeah.
that's who he was. Let's cut that whole part out.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good stuff.
And then I
man.
ended up working on The Voice with him at one point too. So
Yeah.
there you go.
Oh, really? The Voice?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, this brother's been around.
Man, I guess.
Been around, you know.
I watched a bunch of the Extreme Home Makeovers.
Did you?
Those are so great.
That changed my life. It really did.
Oh, really?
In every way. And when you talk about a dream job, for me in my late 20s and 30s, doing that job was amazing. We were on the road about 9 months at a time. We would work for 9 straight days plus a travel day on each end. So it's 11 days, like going hard.
That's your life, yeah.
And it'd be wherever we'd be. We'd be in North Carolina one, then we'd go home, be home for about 7 days-ish, then go out and we'd be up in, Texas and Washington.
Change your life, you mean like inspirationally? Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel like that premise of that show really was altruistic in its vision. I think that doing something
So the
for
people that
deserve-
were behind it too also had that heart, like not just like doing it for.
Yeah, the director that I worked under, the executive producer, I mean, he really was that kind of guy.
I love that.
Personally. And to
Wow.
this day, I
That's
give him
cool.
a call and talk about stuff. He believed in the mission, and the mission was to do something for deserving families that need a hand. And then the house itself kind of became the B character, if you will. The A story became the neighborhood and the people. And so later on in the show, it became more of what are we doing for the community? So for instance, one of the last ones we did was in Joplin, Missouri, after their big tornado that devastated a high school and knocked out an entire neighborhood, basically. So that episode, we came in and we did 7. I say we, I just mean I was there filming it. I wasn't doing it, but built 7 houses in 7 days and rebuilt a local park. And to hear the stories that these people would say was amazing. And so from a maybe spiritual and communal feel, it was so inspiring to see the goodness in human beings. And there'd be so many people coming out and volunteering, and they really were there volunteering, around the clock. And it became really important for me there. Career-wise, it was great. It was the first big network TV show that I became a supervisor in my department for. So that was great career-wise.
What was that department? Just curious.
That was sound.
Sound. Okay,
Audio department.
supervising sound on that show.
Exactly. And I met the woman that then became my son's mother. So
wow.
Personally became massive. And then also for fun, me and some of the guys put together a little road band, and we'd go to these little towns, and I'd call up like a local open mic. Hey, do you mind if we come play?
This is like in your downtime?
Downtime. Yeah, downtime. Yeah, after working like a 12, 13-hour day.
5 minutes you have.
Yeah, after working about a 12 or 13-hour day.
That was their atelic moments. They had to get out.
We'd be like, hey, let's go play at this open mic. And so at the beginning of the week, maybe we'd do that. And of course, we'd bring in a lot of people because people wanted to come hang out. Some of the cast were in our band.
The crew that you traveled with, I mean, was it a pretty big entourage? I mean, because you had to use local contractors, a lot of local people when you came in, which was being a coordination nightmare, especially the pace you guys were going at.
Yeah, there could be up to 80 crew members traveling around like a wild circus. Yeah, and that includes, catering trucks to, camera, audio, lights, and all the producing team and everyone. The cast would travel, and And then that doesn't include the hundreds of volunteers throughout the
And they're
week.
still making money.
Well, I don't think they did towards the end. That's why it's not here anymore.
That's right. I got 80 people. And then how many people would add? I'm sorry.
I just want to say, how long was that season for you with Extreme Home Makeover?
So I would bank about a 9-month period where be on the road for quite a while, come back for a week, be on the road, back and back and back. So they were my primary client during that period. And then you sort of fill in the gaps with other
And you
things.
did this for how many years?
I did 3 seasons of that show, and then they did a reboot on HGTV, and I did that one. They're filming one now, which I'm not a part of. But so 4 seasons of my life, and then I took a season off in the middle of it. So it was over a period of about 5 years, and I became, friendly with the crew, bunch of good people as well, and the cast.
80 people run around the country, and then how many people do you think would be added to that when you landed on site, like contractors?
I mean, it was 1,000 sometimes. 1,000 human beings coming together for the same objective.
It would have to be.
Yeah, it was.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Because the flip was what, 2 weeks or a week or something?
Yeah.
It was like days.
I mean, I would be in tears probably every other episode. I mean, literally, the crew would be in tears. I always say you got to drink the Kool-Aid. You got to buy into like what the mission is, and it took a certain. I don't know if I could do it in my mid-40s now to that extent. I mean, we went hard.
And those were volunteers, right?
Those were all the blue
volunteers.
shirts, they call them.
Wow.
So yeah, that show was super important to me, both personally and professionally.
So how did it change you? I mean,
Incredible.
like you said, it was inspirational.
Yeah.
Did it flip the script for you for life, or what do you mean?
It did. It also made me very aware of what I wanted to work on. I became more selective about trying to believe in the people I was working with and believe in what the premise was. There are a lot of silly shows out there, and I thankfully was in a position where I could kind of, delineate what would make me feel good versus what would be just a paycheck.
You felt like that show had more purpose.
That show had purpose.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How did that experience on that show? Because it seems I'm loving the story of it. And what you just said is really close to the same question, but what did it leave with you? How did it affect your values? Obviously, the selection part, that's really good, but what did it leave with you that you're still working through or working with today? Living from is probably a better phrase there.
Well, that show gave me my son, who's 10.
Awesome.
Because I met the woman that I was with for quite a while.
That's a big one.
So that's huge.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's the biggest game changer, of course. But what it left me personally was a sense of loyalty, a sense of talk about stewardship. There was some stewarding in the idea of working in the entertainment business. What can I bring to the table that will not only entertain, but maybe make the world just a little better for a minute?
Yes.
In a very small sense, because TV and podcasts and music, it's for entertaining, right? We want to maybe take a moment away from that day. But also I believe that with that, you can do something good.
Yes.
And in my little small way, I hope that I've done that. And I'll meet people and I'll mention some projects I've worked on. And it's funny, the things that resonate with people. You know? And anytime I mention that show, it's funny, that show.
It's a heart pull.
It is. And a lot of people have, stories, I watched that with my family. And, I've seen people that were on the show randomly, throughout.
So to tag on to your question, what would you say to like your son? Well, I'm almost getting emotional. But what would you say to your son, and even to our listeners, life lesson like, hey, if you're going to do something important, think about this?
I think that having passion is paramount in your career. I think that one needs to choose what they like doing and what they're good at and try to apply that to somehow make you money and help other people in the process, or give people a sense of hope, or like a little bit of positivity or a little bit of introspection. So what I try to tell him, and what I hopefully am doing with him, is embracing what he likes, encouraging that, and giving the extra hour of, all right, I don't really like, he's huge in karate. He's fantastic. I never did martial arts. I tried it for about a week when I was a kid. Said, yeah, this isn't for me.
Give me a guitar.
Yeah, give me a guitar. I've since learned a lot about martial arts through a lot of projects I've worked on and things. And so, simple answer is encourage that. Just like my dad did for me with
that's
sound.
what I was thinking. Yeah.
He thought, oh, that's cool. You want to play some guitar? Great.
Yeah. So if you win at one thing, karate, and you excel to some degree, it has a translation for something maybe that has a little more gravitas or distance for him, like in life. Do you see his talents? Okay, karate, that's one thing, right? Do you see some things developing in him? You're like, oh, that'd be a good working skill.
Exactly. Are you passionate about this? And
do you see some stuff like that in him? Though is what I mean.
I do. He's an only child, and so he's a little CEO in the making already. He's very good at negotiating.
I can testify to that.
That's good. Yeah.
So I want to help encourage and push him in the way that I see him going. And I don't know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
That's part of what's exciting too.
With passion, what kind of advice would you give to a listener in a world that's really noisy? There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of different pathways. How would you advise someone, just in general, how can they begin to discover their passion if they're not sure what it is right now?
I think being true to yourself is key. Sometimes in this digital media, social media world, it can be tough for kids, to just say, we on the surface, it feels like it's easy because everybody is encouraging be yourself. But the truth is I think it's hard for kids. Yeah. I think it's hard for people to be honest about what it is they like and who they are and what they want to do and not feel embarrassed or ashamed. And, and sometimes you might have this grand idea of what you can do. And that's okay. Embrace it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Roll with
100%.
it. You never know.
How big is experimentation a bit with someone just discovering like the me? I know when I was younger, it's like I wrestled with that like a lot of us do, is just, who am I and what do I like? But there's this process of try stuff, in a safe context with some trusted voices or some trusted people. What is your thoughts on that? And was there any experimentation with this is not going to be what I want?
Yeah. So in college, I wanted to be a music therapist. That's what I wanted to do.
Oh,
I was always fascinated with psychology and Jung and a lot of these people that still mean a lot to me today. I would just eat it up in the library. And I liked music. So I thought, what a great way to blend these two. But I realized I wouldn't be that great at that, And I think being really honest with yourself is important.
Love it.
Yes, you can learn skill and you can get better, of course. But I think sometimes it's best to just say, let me look in the mirror. No, I'm not very good at that.
Yeah.
Let's move on from that one.
Right.
So you mentioned true self a while ago. I find that in today's society, that statement of true self gets lost in, well, my true self is how I feel versus what I'm capable of. And in that scenario that you just mentioned, you were able to be emotionally intelligent enough at 18 or 19 to say, hey, look, I feel this, but I also realize what my strengths are. I noticed that like with my kids and different people that I work with, that, this is how I feel. And then that equates to my true self. And that's not always the case because even as you mentioned how hard it is for kids right now, they're having to process so much information, and all that information is bringing up feelings. And so they're really on a hunt. Like it's like they're mining their heart a little bit about, okay, I am trying to find my true self. That is one thing I'm very empathetic to kids today is how do they really drill down and not just go on what the latest feeling or trend or what influencers are saying, to push back and do what you did and be like, okay, I'm going to go on a path less traveled. I mean, we're talking Madisonville to Full Sail to all these awesome stories that you just said. Yeah. It took your dad to, build that firm foundation and belief that you could, and you were able to believe in yourself. And I see that in kids today. They really struggle with, can I do that?
I think you mentioned something, and I think I'll frame this kind of in a question for you, but that be passionate where you are and what you're doing right now. Until fail. It's like if it fails, and then you pick up and do something else. But if that's the thing, go at it. Go at it like you mean it. You know what I mean? Like, don't play at it. Go at it like you mean it. And I think that translates then, you find what you're not. But if you're passionate in everything, you're going to land on something, and you're going to get the feedback from others as well. But it sounded a little bit like that's where you went. It's like I found I was good at something and I went for it.
And, to Cliff's point, feelings aren't facts. It's just a snapshot of the
moment. A lot of
moment.
people feel like they can sing,
Yeah.
I
know I can't sing. Feelings aren't facts, and everything's okay. It's okay to have feelings.
Yes.
It's okay to have your feeling, but don't be married to it.
Right.
Let it change and evolve, because that's one of the greatest quotes ever is in Coming to America. Things must and always do change, my friend. And if you're not on board, you're kind of stuck, right?
We can't 100% identify ourselves based on a feeling, because they move, right? And so what I'm hearing that I would say in a lot of the conversations I have with the up and coming generation, my kids included, would be accepting the gift of limitations. That's a gift. So passion and the gift of limitations. So swamp could be all passion, but it's so diffused, it's so spread out that it doesn't really produce anything. You can't bear any weight. It might even become stagnant because you're just trying to do too many things. But if you can accept limitations, and the joke I had in my head is you can dream of being a center in the NBA. You're going to have a certain standard of height.
That's never going to happen for me.
Well, yeah, and again, that's
not gonna happen.
That doesn't mean a person's less or that they're not a really good ball player. But
I feel like I could.
Yeah, right. Yes, that's a wonderful example of feelings. Is that, and you may be an excellent ball player, but to compete at that level, height has a certain range of height that's going to have to be required for that, and I don't have any power over that.
Yeah.
So I accept that limitation, and where would then that go? Because it's channeling the passion.
Yeah.
Channeling the passion. So I would just encourage our audience to not curse limitations or parts of you that aren't 100% aligned with your passion, but accept the limitation and see what river that turns into. That can really, because the more you apply limitation to pressure or force, the stronger it gets. The more direct it gets.
If you don't accept,
and I'm hearing that in your story.
If you don't accept your limitations, somebody's going to impose them on you.
Yeah.
Well,
you're just going to get fired. Like he's gotten fired several times.
Hey, thanks for reminding me.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
You're nobody until somebody hates you.
Yeah. No, somebody is going to impose it on you, and they're going to bring you to your reality. So,
yeah, acceptance is key, and that's part of knowing what you're good at and what you're not, and wearing a lot of hats is great, but sometimes we can't do it all.
And that's a story too. Like, so what's so cool is you're in the business of story, but we're also living stories. Like our life. That's why that industry is so appealing to us. As humans, just love story. But we're living a story, and that story has a path to it. And those hiccups and those limitations are all pointing us closer and closer to where that passion in us is meant to be fulfilled.
And I think that's a good point. And also, you have to fail. You have to get fired a time or two. You have to really do a terrible job on something to learn how to do a good job. And I had plenty of those. I mean, I've done a lot of TV shows, a lot of things, 1,000 hours that have been aired on TV or online or whatever. But a lot of that is not great either, and I've made a lot of mistakes. And I feel that to be really good at what you do, I approach it as if it's the first and last job. I might not do this again tomorrow, so let me do the best job. I love to remind myself that we're all replaceable. I might be pretty good at what I do, but there's somebody else that maybe is even better, maybe more hungry that day. Yeah. How good did I do that day?
Yeah.
Apply that every day.
Yeah.
And that comes with discipline. I'm a pretty disciplined person.
Yeah,
so
you
sometimes
are.
Adam, what would be in some of the failures in your life? We all represent a lot of different failures in our story, but in your story, what would you say a major thing you learned you carry with to this day that you only learned it through a failure? What's a value or a principle or a lesson that came out of a failure in your life and you're like, you know what, I'm thankful that I went through that because it's made me great in this area.
I'm thankful. I have no regrets, and I mean that. I have many things that I wish I had done differently, but I don't necessarily regret the outcome because it's made me such a stronger person. I used to work way too much, and that was my driving force. I identified myself with this worker, and there's a certain level of I am this person and I have to be this person, and that is destructive in many ways in our lives, our personal life, and it also can blind us with what career path maybe we need to be following more. And so definitely in some personal relationships that could be something that I've taken a lot from. Let me make sure that I have that time for that extra hour to just hang out and chit chat. And if Cliff calls me, make myself open for an hour or whatever. Like I don't want to limit things. Does that make sense?
Man,
I don't want to have a time management problem.
Yeah.
Because I find that the more I let go, I can get a lot more back. And hopefully in that moment, I'm giving more too. So if I can just give myself to a person or a moment, man, that's really beneficial for me. And I learned that by working too much. And so for me, that was a big...
I like this statement that says, if you want to go fast, go alone.
Yeah.
If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for me, allowing other people to be experts in areas of things you can do, but maybe you don't do as well, or you don't do well at all. I mean, but finding that teaming, is good too.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you mentioned, and we've kind of talked about passion, and then you talked about how Connor is getting involved in martial arts a little bit. Just give us a little bit of a flair. I was able to watch some of the documentary that you're working on of how this new season of life that you're in, you're kind of actually stepping in. I don't know if I'm going to get the business terms right, but kind of director, producer, or maybe both. Tell us a little bit about those projects that you've been working on.
So I love documentaries. I love storytelling, and I love capturing real moments and somehow making it relatable by digitally capturing it on cameras and things like that. And so I sort of serendipitously started a documentary quite a few years back during COVID, and it was about music. And that sort of led into other little projects that I've found along the way. And one that I'm currently producing is about these two women in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They're both world champions, married lesbian couple. They have their own business, their own studio. Incredible story. And part of that was I saw a t-shirt that said, "Keep Jiu-Jitsu gay." And I thought, that's interesting. That's not something I'm familiar with. Let me look into that. Let's unpack
the
that a
gay
little
part
bit.
or the jiu-jitsu part? Which part are you not
Have I
familiar
seen
with?
this on
All
social
the
media
above.
or something?
I don't know
that
if you-
statement, that T-shirt.
Maybe you have.
Probably.
It was in Austin. Remember, Keep Austin Weird?
Yeah.
The shirt said, "Keep Jiu-Jitsu gay."
I think I've
And
seen this.
that was while I was filming a show
Yeah.
for the WWE. That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, that's where the rear naked choke and all that comes in. So
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So I did a little deep dive on that subject and found these two amazing women, and I cold called them and said, "Hey, I'd love to follow you around a little bit and see what you guys are all about." And it turned into this now year-long project, and we just filmed what's probably the final act of it, and speaking with investors and going that route, because the model has changed. Back to what we were talking about earlier. Back in the day, I could tell you I have an idea for a documentary or a show, and I could potentially sell that.
Mm-hmm.
Then it turned into, well, let me get like a pitch deck for you and
Now you
show
just
you
go
that.
do it yourself.
Let me sell it then.
Yeah.
Then it became, well, let me film a sizzle reel. So now I got to go out and film a few minutes of some stuff. Let me sell. Now
Just go do it.
you got to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe even then take it to film festival circuit before you can even get it purchased. For instance, the Will Ferrell documentary just came out about him and his trans friend. They did that whole thing on their own production dime.
Really?
Got into the film festival, and then it got picked up by a streamer.
Okay.
And you're talking Will Ferrell. So little old me, who's like got a pretty decent sound resume, but who's this guy directing? And somehow I've had incredible opportunities with
So where are you getting
award-winning people that are donating time and efforts to this project.
this one? to this project?
Yeah, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So keep tuned in online or wherever it ends up being.
Yeah. That's
So you might do
exciting
more
stuff.
of that, right? Like your curiosity, chase something down, and
Yeah, I think that's maybe one thing that I'm blessed with is curiosity and the desire to find the answer, whether I like it or not.
do you have a mentor?
Wonder fuel.
Wonder fuel.
Wonder fuel.
That's wonder fuel.
That's wonder
Curiosity.
fuel.
Do you have somebody that is kind of a go-to mentor, or somebody that's kind of like your dad's passed? Is there somebody in your life that's kind of like, I don't know, your inspiration or your sounding board or your root?
Yeah, in my personal life, the beautiful lady I'm with right now, she's not in the industry, so I get to pick her brain, and she tells me all the things that I'm not thinking of. And my older brother, Jason, who actually is a dentist just like our dad was, but he's not in the same business as I am either, obviously. And he's been incredibly helpful and supportive along the way, and bouncing ideas. And again, going back to like keeping it really real, and helps me see the weak points and encourages the strong points. And then from a looking at a mentor, someone I don't personally know, I've worked with before, but Rick Rubin, as a music producer, I love his philosophy on all things creative, which is, whatever it is you like doing, do more of that, and be true to it. Always look for the truth and the honesty in it, and all the other stuff kind of flourishes if you can do that.
You got anybody that does chest thumping?
Say again?
Chest thumping. Somebody says, dude.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. Well, he does it a little bit for me, which is great. But yeah, I mean, all my closest friends, that's how they are. I don't hang out with people that are just like me. Typically, I like people that are different looking and sounding and different backgrounds. And they'll tell me that. Like, hang on, did you ever think about this? Or why would you do that? And that's like fuel for me. I think
everybody needs that, right? Everybody needs some.
Yeah. I mean, he and I have had that relationship for a while. I mean, even back in high school when I was talking about wanting to wear a skirt, and you were like, hey, don't.
You don't have the legs for that.
Don't do that.
While I had black fingernail polish.
Yeah,
no,
right.
don't do that.
There were lots of
questions. Is that when you took up jiu-jitsu?
Yes, yeah. Well, we rolled around a little bit. There's a lot of questions going around then. All right, so 2 final things. Is Gordon Ramsay a misfit? And if so, how? And who's your favorite misfit?
Is Gordon Ramsay a misfit? Yes. He's also awesome in real life. He goes up to everybody, says hello, shakes hands. One of the great things I learned from Gordon Ramsay is use butter. When you're going to use it, use it. If you're going to use a butter, really use it.
Use it.
And when I'm cooking, I take that advice from a professional.
It helps. It helps everything.
Greatest misfit. Whew, you got me there. Should have thought about that one beforehand. Greatest misfit.
What about musically? Can you think of somebody like that? Or
I mean,
creatively?
John Lennon.
Yeah, I was like
John Lennon.
Bob Dylan.
I love Bob Dylan. We talk about Dylan for hours too. Don't get me going. No, John Lennon, wonderful. What a walking contradiction he was.
Really?
Peace and love. Used to hit his first wife. And let's hone in on yoga and meditation. Well, he's doing heroin. Let's. Oh, Yoko, I love you so much. Let's be faithful. Cheated on her. Every contradiction you could see, but I admire him as a human being because towards the end, I feel like he kind of got it, and then artistically, just talking
kind of got
truth.
It as in he leveled out to be his true self.
I think
whatever,
so.
Yeah.
I think so. I think he did from what I gather.
Mm-hmm.
And then as an artist, I love how he would try every different genre, try different things, and was always open to other ideas and would embrace that and put that in his art. I loved it. He was a misfit. Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Good one.
Well, I think we've got some guitar jamming to do. We're going to do a little rock star, baby, but it's been a huge honor, man, to have you on the pod, and love you and wish you all the best. Thank you, man.
Thank you, buddy. Love you.
Love you, brother.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very
All right,
interesting.
boys.
Thanks, Adam.
Let's get out of here. Let's go.